All right, good afternoon. How we doing? Oh, geez. Really? Come on, you've come to the best session in the entire IoT track, and that's the best I get? How's it going, 1 o'clock? Let's go, come on. Okay, my name's Mark. I run global business development at AWS for a whole bunch of things, including IoT, mobile, serverless computing, and now that if you were at Midnight Madness last night, I get to actually say the end of my title, because it's not a secret anymore, mixed reality. So I have a bunch of fun topics that my team and I get to work with customers like you on all around the world. And today, in this session, that's kind of going to be our focus, which is telling a few stories about some amazing things some of our customers have done in the realm of IoT. We have a set of really great speakers from 3 very different companies who are here to share some stories of their IoT journey, a little bit of reflection on the impact on their industry, and a few tips and tricks. So like Andy Jassy likes to talk about, re:Invent's all about customers teaching other customers. So I'm going to talk to you for a couple of minutes just to set the stage, and then we're going to turn it over so you can hear those stories. And what we're going to do is each of our presenters is going to present for a few minutes. We actually will pause. If there are any questions, I'll have you yell out some questions. I'll repeat it for everybody to hear if you have questions for the individual speakers. And then at the end, we'll actually have an opportunity if anybody wants to clarify anything towards the end of the presentation. Deal? Are we ready? Okay, so let's dig into this. So Dirk, our VP, who runs all of our IoT services here at AWS, coined this amazing phrase a little over a year ago as we were developing the various IoT services that we've released to help customers build IoT solutions. And really, it was driven from this fact that IoT is kind of a weird term, right? It means kind of everything and nothing all at the same time. And I'm the IoT guy, I get to say that. It can mean connected device in the home, it can mean Industry 4.0 solutions and everything in between. It is also the case that, look, if we put a sensor on that door at the back of the room and all we got was a bunch of open and close all day long and you didn't do anything with that data, what was the point of connecting things? The simple act of connecting something to something else, not new in computer science, by the way, made easier and made very different by changes in technology over time. That's not actually the goal. The goal has got to be to drive some business value of some sort. And so we coined this phrase: if you knew the state of everything in the world and had unlimited ability to reason upon that data, what problems will you solve? And this is actually the start of the working backwards process for almost everything that we do in the IoT space. We're thinking about how can we help you connect those devices and use that data to actually solve some of your business challenges. And for a lot of our customers, when we meet and we listen to their journey towards IoT, towards some kind of digital transformation, they sort of recognize that in their own business and their own processes, their own systems, they've made this move from mechanical to digital to connected, and now we're trying to make that leap to coordinated. Simply having connected devices and not using that data in an intelligent and coordinated way isn't actually going to get you to solve those problems. And many of those customers are seeking to solve problems, I'd say, at one end of a scale or another. At the one side, IoT brings with it the promise of increased operational efficiency. Having that data really decreases OpEx in a lot of ways. You think about things like predictive maintenance and fleet management and asset tracking, where having these connected systems can drive a lot of efficiency that hits that bottom line very, very, very quickly. But at the other end of the scale, you have customers who are thinking about revenue growth, about ways to find new digital services, maybe embark on entirely new products, selling their products in different ways. We've all heard stories of industries where you go from selling the physical thing to selling services around that thing as a change in so many industries around the world. And sometimes customers are trying to solve both. And while you think about trying to solve those problems, you think about how are we going to think about those new business models? How are we going to connect devices so that they get better with time? How do we get closer to our customers? So we drive efficiency. How do we get to that point of having a data-driven discipline in the decision-making in our operations? But hey, this is complex and it's multidimensional. A lot of customers, and maybe some of you here today, might have started down the IoT road and have discovered, hey, it's a world of testing, it's a world of proof of concepts, it's a world of trying to discover, hey, is this really having the impact on our business that we would think? And customers struggle with a number of different factors. There's all of the devices and sensors, just the universe of the types of devices that you may want to connect, and how do you think about doing that in an easy way? How do you think about connectivity and infrastructure? How do you build effective analytics and insights? How do you build applications that leverage those connected devices? But sometimes, more importantly, is how do you do the change management in your own organizations? As you go towards along a digital journey, sometimes the force that you run into isn't a technology issue, it's actually a change management issue inside your own organization. Hey, we've always done it this way. That change is going to be difficult, particularly if that change is fundamentally disrupting a business model. I think you'll hear some stories of that as we go through today. So this is what we hear from our customers. I do briefings all around the world, in Seattle as customers come to visit us, and the story is often the same. People have really amazing ideas of what they could do. They struggle with this complexity, and they're looking to solve business problems to help their customers in the end. So with that, enough of me. Let's hear from some amazing customers who are going to tell us some stories. We have three great speakers from Amway, from Pentair, and from Man & Hummel, who are going to tell us their stories. And like I said, we're gonna listen to that story. I'll take some questions towards the end, and we'll change speakers. So with no further ado, let me introduce Everett from Amway. Amway is one of my favorite customers. In from Michigan, company maybe didn't even know was building connected devices. These guys have done some amazing things. Have been here a few times at reInvent. I'm really excited for you to hear their stories. So thanks for joining us. Big round of applause for them. Come on, here we go.
All right, so before we get started, I'd like to talk a little bit about Amway. I'm Everett Binger. I'm a senior architect at Amway. I've been in Amway for a little over 13 years. It's been a great company for me. Most of that has been in architecture, so architecture experience. A little bit about Amway. We're an $8.8 billion company. We're in approximately 100 countries and regions and have over 19,000 employees. And I'll kind of explain why that gets a little bit complicated here in a little bit. Most of those countries and regions actually have their own independent IT, marketing, sales, these own independent divisions in each country, so that adds a little bit of complexity when you're trying to roll out an IoT initiative. We also make about 450 plus products, so most of you have probably tried an Amway product and you don't even know it. We don't sell just soap, I can promise you that, we sell more than that. And I'd like to talk a little bit about that journey into those other products. So our journey began as kind of an R&D initiative 10 plus years ago, really talking about what would it take to put connectivity or connection of the internet into some of our products. That started with our Sky Atmosphere air treatment system. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with that, but we recently launched that in June in North America. And it started out as a grassroots initiative to really understand what would it take to add internet connectivity into that Sky air treatment system. Today, we actually partnered with AWS IoT, to implement that air treatment system in North America. We started with ProServe engagement, approximately an 11-week ProServe engagement to stand up our IoT platform in AWS. We spoke about that last year at reInvent, so if you're curious on exactly how we had to innovate in the IoT space and implement this platform, feel free to look at that video from last year. We also partnered with Microchip and Amazon to create a just-in-time registration process, which is fairly unique in the industry, so I also recommend checking that out as well. And then in the future, when it comes to IoT, we really plan on putting together a connected experience strategy and working team to understand what would it take to further Amway in the IoT space. Like I said, we have 450 plus products, so what does it look like to add connectivity to some of those products in the future? Understanding why to add connectivity really is broken down, we feel, into two different opportunity spectrums, a consumer opportunity and a non-consumer opportunity. Pretty basic, you guys probably are all aware of this. But essentially, the consumer opportunity we feel is probably very important, but it's not the largest value opportunity. Most of the value is actually achieved from non-consumer opportunity. So if we add connectivity into our air treatment system, we know that we have to provide something that our consumers want to use. But essentially, most of that value is understanding exactly how they're using the product. Our previous air treatment system, we like to kind of joke about this, but it is a world-class, top-of-the-line air treatment system. That was both a good and a bad thing. It was a great thing because consumers could say that they're using a top-of-the-line air treatment system, and our distribution force could sell a top-of-the-line air treatment system. The bad thing is that they were never returned. So we only got about 2% of those units back to Amway, and 2% of those units is what we could analyze for how are they functioning in the field, what exactly were they doing in the field, what was the consumer using that product for. Also keep in mind that 2% was failed units, so we really were unaware of how our good units were functioning in the field. With connectivity, that is non-consumer value that we can now generate and collect for Amway, as well as for our distribution force. So the main thing we had to learn, and we had to learn this rather quickly, is that essentially IoT is the digital extension of a physical product. So traditionally, we would define value in these very siloed forms, and probably all of you guys out there are probably experiencing this exact same problem. We have IT, digital, R&D, marketing, sales. They're all defining what is the value of IoT individually. We are still facing this problem and trying to kind of break down those barriers to really understand that value needs to be a non-siloed, a cross-functional type of opportunity. Today, we've got to really understand that IT needs to work with digital to understand what is the digital extension of that product while simultaneously working with product development. I actually love this quote too. It's from one of our executives, and it's, "A connected product requires a connected organization." And that could be no truer today as it is going to be tomorrow. So Mark also asked me to lay out some tips and tricks that Amway has learned over the past 2 years in doing this IoT initiative. And I put together 3. The first one is something we're struggling with right today. So we've created dedicated agile product teams. These teams consist of IT, marketing, digital sales. Probably a lot of the companies out there in the audience are doing the exact same thing. But what we're noticing is that we've broken down the department silos by creating product teams, a product team focused on atmosphere, sky, but we're also creating these other product teams for additional products. What that causes is potentially silos now, product silos instead of department silos. So you have to be very cautious of this. When you break down a department silo, you cannot create product-specific silos. Value still has to propagate throughout the organization and across those products. We need to learn from Sky not just to make the next air treatment system better, but to also make other internet-connected products better in the future as well. The second thing is don't connect just for connect's sake. If anybody has gone to CES, we actually went last year. I recommend everybody goes to CES, mostly because it's quite humorous to see 100,000 geeks all throughout Las Vegas wandering around, which is pretty fun. But the second thing is to really check out a lot of the products that are actually being distributed throughout CES, and specifically in their IoT track. And I don't want to offend anybody if you're working on this hairbrush, but there's a connected hairbrush. And there's an app that goes along with that hairbrush, and it will tell you how many strokes you've made throughout your hair and kind of tell you how many more you should take. That's probably great for some people, but I'm not exactly sure if that's true value, if they're going to generate consumer-based value beyond just getting data of how many people stroke their hair with a hairbrush. So don't add connectivity just for connectivity's sake. Have a true consumer value that you want to target from it in order to obtain that non-consumer value. Which really goes into the third tip and trick, which is focus on the user. Another example at CES is, and I don't mean to offend anybody as well, but is the connected sandal. And this exists. The connected sandal is essentially a sandal, and the mobile application tells you if your sandal is on or off your feet. Now, that's a great product, probably to understand how many people are wearing their sandals, how many steps are being taken, etc., for the non-consumer value. But from the consumer perspective, there's probably not a value there. The other additional piece to that application is that it tells you what other sandals you should buy. So they essentially created a connectivity initiative, added connectivity to their sandals so they could sell other products. And that's something you really can't focus on. You have to generate the best experience for the user before you try and generate that additional revenue. So those are my 3 tips and tricks. I'll invite Mark back up for any questions or bombardment.
Well, I'm going to start. So the connected organization. How do you, so someone in Amway comes up to you and says, I hate to break it to you, we're going to make the connected sandal. We're going to sell it everywhere. What's the decision-making process? How does the technology group, how do the sales and marketing groups actually work on deciding if that's a good idea or not? Like, how do you push back against that, maybe even in your own organization?
Yeah, it's a great question because it seems like we always get asked, we need to add connectivity to X product, and I ask, why do you need to add connectivity to X product? And they say, because people are adding connectivity. And that's not a good answer to add connectivity to a product. So we're actually forming a group. We formed a dedicated team that's looking at the value proposition at Amway for IoT, and a governing body that sits over top of that group to really understand how does Amway want to move in the IoT direction? Does it mean we add connectivity to what products? There's decisions that need to be made because of that. So I would say it's really understanding what governing body needs to exist in your organization to allow for decisions to be approved or denied.
Do you get a veto?
Depends, I guess.
Depends?
Yeah, I would say we try and get a veto, but most of the time it's a very lengthy veto-ish conversation.
Now, the other tip you gave was around deploying sort of these agile teams and that warning of siloing by product. One thing we've seen as organizations think about IoT is building horizontal technology across an entire organization. So say, hey, we're the team that is going to do data ingestion from devices. The product teams around the organization are the consumers of that. Do you think that, what's your take on, does that work? Do you find it's better to spin these up at a product level? Are you guys looking at, are there certain functions, maybe security, maybe user identity, these things that become horizontal across all your products, or is it on a case by case?
Yeah, so I think it depends on the maturity of the organization. So I think Amway, fairly immature in this space, we decided to take the approach of standing up product teams to deliver products, get them out into the field, and really understand what the value proposition is from the end consumers that are going to be buying our products. So after that, I think we're now starting to analyze what we call centers of excellence, or these disciplines that exist within data architecture, or our IoT platform stack is actually now a dedicated team independent of the products themselves, a completely independent team that is focused strictly on the IoT product itself. So there's a product team for our IoT backend. I think we're going to see more and more of these centers of excellence, these cross-functional, still cross-functional, but more dynamic teams that are dedicated to a complete discipline throughout the entire organization.
Awesome. Any questions from the audience? Right here, and say it nice and loud, and then I'll repeat for everyone.
Sure. So the question is about the product that you already connected. Do you sell it as a product? Do you sell it as a service? And how does the sales force react to that?
Question is, for your existing connected product, how are you selling it? Do you sell it as a physical product, as a service? How are your sales teams dealing with that?
Yeah, it's a great question, actually. Because right now we sell it as a product. So it's a consumer-based product. It's actually deployed in North America. You can go out and look at it today at Amway.com. That product is a consumer-based, non-service revenue-based product. Now, we are looking at and discussing what's a service that could be wrapped around that physical good and sell more of a service-oriented product, but that will probably not happen with our existing air treatment system.
Excellent. One other question for Everett? If not, did I say, oh, right here.
So I don't understand what the value is to customer from service. If I'm going to do this for a product, what's it for me? Why do I want to support your service if it actually my net protection? So I'm not getting it.
So the question is, as the consumer, the end user of the product, what's in it for them? Why are they letting you use their internet connection to collect all this data? It sounds, maybe it's better for you than it is for them. What's the pitch there?
Yeah, so that is probably the problem that every single company in here has to face. So For Amway, we have to take a step back and know that we need to collect more information about our products in the field. We really do need to take that initiative so we can make the next product better. But our primary focus needs to be making a good consumer product, a product that a consumer wants to engage with, and a product that a consumer also wants to connect to the internet. So whether that means different features like our current air treatment system can be turned on remotely. You can turn it on from the office, so before you even get home, you'll have clean air in your home. Integrating that air treatment system maybe with some Amazon products like Alexa. So there are different advantages or different value opportunities that you have to inject that are strictly consumer focused, knowing that if you have a good consumer-based product, you'll hopefully get that non-consumer value.
Excellent. All right, with that, round of applause for Everett. We'll have time for some more questions at the end. All right, thank you, sir. Okay, we're going to change gears a little bit. Very different type of industry. And I'm going to invite Phil up from Pentair. Many of you have probably inadvertently met up with Pentair's products in products that you have consumed along the way. And so to tell that story and maybe teach everyone a little bit about water, I'm going to turn it over to Phil.
Great.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Phil Roshigo. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for a company called Pentair. A little bit about us. We're currently about a $5.5 billion company, two segments, our electrical segment and our water segment. And our board of directors just recently had a brilliant idea that water and electricity don't mix, and we're going to split into two companies. And I'm here to talk about the water business that's going to be a public company starting May 1st. And so I'm going to start off talking to you a little bit about our reason for being a water company, and then we'll talk a little bit about three examples where we're using IoT amongst a whole number of other opportunities we see for IoT. So when you think about water, water's kind of one of these elements that people tend to sometimes take for granted. But we see water as a major food challenge. We see it as an industrial challenge. We see it as a personal challenge. And we see it as a health challenge. So let's talk a little bit about what I mean by that. So why is water a food challenge? Well, water is really essential to feed the world. It turns out that 70% of the world's water is used for food production. And we're expecting, given the growth in the economy, the growth in the world population, that demand is going to double and significantly stress our clean water supply. It's also affecting our fishing supply. One of the major sources of protein that is consumed, and especially as the developing world continues to develop and the middle class continues to expand, is fish. So we find that 57% of the world's fish stock is fully exploited, 17% is overexploited, and we're doing some exciting things to address those challenges. Water is also an industrial challenge. Industry uses the second most amount of water next to agriculture, 19% by demand, and it turns out for every liter of wastewater coming out of an industrial plant, it pollutes about 8 liters of fresh water, which again is the water we drink. So it's having a significant impact on continuing growth in industry and a personal challenge. So here's a couple interesting facts around why is it a personal and health challenge. In the past 40 years, the population's doubled, but the amount of water that we consume is quadrupled. Today, there's 1 billion people who lack access to clean water, and here's an amazing fact. Every 15 seconds, a child dies from water-related illnesses. That's pretty amazing. I'll put that in a different point of view. Imagine that you woke up tomorrow morning and 10 jumbo jets filled with children crashed into the Atlantic Ocean. It would be pretty startling and pretty dramatic impact, I think, shaking everybody pretty much emotionally. Well, that happens every single day, all right? And we don't even think about it. It just kind of goes along day by day by day. That's what 15 seconds, every 15 seconds a child dies. Amazing statistic. And it turns out by 2025, half the world's population is going to be living in a water-stressed area. So I tell you all this because that's really the reason Pentair exists. That's what drives us every day. That's why we get up every day and come to work. It's a pretty exciting and motivated reason for building an exciting company focused on water. So here's just a number of really broad brush perspective of what impact we've had on the world for our solutions. We're a pioneer in doing urban farming, where in urban environments we have one of the first urban farms that does aquaculture and and hydroponics in the same facility, producing 275,000 pounds of fish a year and 400,000 pounds of organic produce. Our solutions span from industrial reuse applications where we take industrial water, treat water, generate energy, and generate clean water that can be reused. And our personal applications where we're doing point-of-use applications for everything from making coffee to drinking water in your home has saved about 750 million bottles of plastic that don't go into landfill. So we see this as a huge opportunity, and when we start to look at how are we going to grow our business and do a better job of serving the world, we think that IoT is going to be a huge enabler for us to generate a sustainable access to water for the world and address those challenges. So 3 quick examples. One of the ways we do aquaculture is in sea pens, and this is like local to tributaries and rivers and along the ocean. And this is an interesting industry. It's really not an industry that's very well optimized. And one of the things that we find is that there's not a lot of site-to-site connectivity. So we're not getting learnings from site to site. And one of the other things we find is that you could very easily, because of an ecological event, have all your fish die in your aquaculture facility because you didn't notice that there was going to be a change in temperature or changes in, for instance, plankton coming into the facility. So we have a huge opportunity, and one opportunity that we've used AWS architecture is to be able to instrument these facilities. So now not only can you get a lot more data at each site and start to predict when they might have certain events that are going to affect the productivity of those sites, but now we can do optimization from site to site when we're aggregating all this data and doing amazing analytics. So we call this a continuous learning solution where we'll be able to really optimize the AWS tools using them to generate much more productivity. And we found a really clever use of the AWS IoT button because there's lots of parameters you can't necessarily measure. So while you're watching the fish, the operators could be walking around and they start to see the fish start to act in odd ways. For instance, finning, where they kind of come up to the top and they're taking bigger breaths of water, they would click the AWS button. And so little by little, you start to see certain aggregation of these events, and you start to see be able to do some predictive analytics on whether or not there's something else going on that's going to affect the health of the fish. So it's a really exciting application for us. Another application is in beer filtration. It's amazing. Beer's been made the same way for hundreds of years. And we've developed a really exciting new filtration technology that improves the product yield and the quality of the beer and reduces the amount of water that's used in producing beer. But one of the things that we've realized is that again, from site to site, there's not a lot of connectivity. There's not learning that goes on from one beer manufacturing site to another beer manufacturing site. And so when we've developed these new filtration technologies, we've actually sold them with service contracts where we get manual data dumps and we do analysis to help optimize the performance of each of those facilities. And we saw this as a great opportunity, again, to apply the AWS tools to not only be able to do optimization at each site, but be able to start to do optimization on multi-site views from location to location, and be able to do real-time trending and diagnostics and optimization using the full suite of AWS tools. And then just shifting gears, our foundation does a lot of work in the developing world. So here's an application where we have built a water treatment plant in Kibera, Kenya. Kibera is one of the largest slums in the world. We had an opportunity to deliver water to this school called Shining Hope for Communities. It's an amazing story if you want to Google it and understand how this facility in the middle of this slum came to be. But they were basically pirating water off of the local municipality, running polyethylene tubing miles through this slum and contaminating the water to deliver water to these children. So we dug a local well, we analyzed the water, we created a water treatment system to treat the water, and then we spun up an AWS architecture so that we could continuously monitor how the system was working. And why does that matter? What it matters is that because now that we can do this, we're thinking about how do we scale this more and more, because in these local communities, they don't have the technical expertise to maintain them, to sustain them. And we see that being able to use tools like this is going to be one way in which we can help lift these people out of their out of the state in which they're in. So our sustainable solutions today through our Safe Water program have helped over 3 million people. But when you think about that relative to the billion people who lack access to clean water today, that's a small drop in the bucket. So I just want to quickly end with lessons learned. We're still very, very early on our journey. But iterating what Mark and Everett both said, creating real value is important, right? And it's an iterative process. We've got to continue to look for how are we going to use these tools to create value. There's a lot of cool products that we make that we can connect that aren't going to create real value, and we must always be looking at creating that real value, learning, testing, and modifying quickly. And one of the things we really like about the AWS tools is that they're evolving and they're always helping us drive that productivity. The applications I showed you really were more industrial, commercial applications. Don't expect your customers are going to give you that data really easily. You got to build trust. So we've taken the approach where we get data manually. We help them start to understand. We can create real value with them by analyzing that data and being a partner, not just selling them product. And then that helps really build trust. And that's really the end of the story, is that once you have trust, there's more and more things we can do because they know their data is secure, and we're constantly learning from that data and teaching them and helping them grow. And it's not just about selling them a product, but actually helping their businesses improve. Okay? With that, thank you very much.
All right. So a couple of questions, Phil. Yeah. So there was a lot there. Let me ask you this. So you mentioned MVPs.
Yeah.
So you're a big company, industrial company. Yep. Sometimes these things take time to come to market, I imagine. Yep. So maybe a two-part question. How are you organizing your teams around trying, failing fast, moving on to the next MVP?
Well, one of the things that is part of our business is what's called the Pentair Integrated Management System. So we've got processes for developing new products. And so then we have processes within that, when that product development process that are much more agile, that help us really engage customers and learn quick and fail. And it was really important, given that the legacy of Pentair is a traditional old industrial company, to teach our executive team that it's okay to fail as long as you learn and improve and move forward. So
how have the development cycles shortened? I mean, any of these industrial systems, it takes time. Yeah. Do you think the current state of technology has helped reduce that time to market? Is it about stable, but you're doing different things? What's sort of your take?
I'd say we're still really early on that journey. It's getting better, and I think successes help us realize that it's okay to go fast. It's important to have trusted customers that you're engaging, so that when you fail, it's not considered a horrible failure, but it's actually a learning. So.
And IoT is a broad topic because you could put big data and analytics and a number of things. This isn't just about connecting devices, but do you think the way you've organized your technical teams for IoT specific projects is inherently some way different to be able to test and do proof of concepts and fail fast than other areas of technology? Is it about the same because of how technology is evolving across the board? Is there something special about IoT?
We're evolving, but we're creating a very matrix type technology organization where we have engineering leaders in each of our businesses, but an IoT a group that spans across all the businesses. So we get good learning from business to business, not only on the technical side, but the marketing and product management side also.
Now, a question that was asked by the audience member earlier, how much do you feel the pressure to shift business models at a fundamental level? Like, are you moving to, hey, this will become more of a digital service and filtration equipment and pipes and whatever else sort of shows up as a part of that? Is it still an evolution for you? How are you guys wrestling with that change?
I think it varies industry by industry. Within the industrial market, the solution, the actual capital asset that we deliver is really important. And then we see this as an additive service. The IoT service is an additive service to continue to optimize and partner with the customers. When we look at our consumer products, it's very, very different. Connecting those products doesn't necessarily give a lot of advantage to the consumer, but we're in that process of trying to understand, well, if we start to connect our products that we sell into the residential market, how can we create more value for those customers?
Last question. Some amazing stats and some very cool stories about water. With the data you're generating, any interest, pressure, or internal desire to share that data, and have you guys contemplated? I know we've seen some industries where some anonymizing of data and some sharing for the sort of greater good.
Yeah.
Has that sort of crept into the water industry as well? What's your take on that?
It hasn't really yet, but we see, especially when you look at the work that we're doing in the developing world, that's important data to share.
Yeah.
Right? That lifts us all up, and so that's an area that we're looking much more at. The more we can connect those systems in Honduras and Africa and in India and around the world, that is really valuable data for the world to see.
Yeah. Any questions for Phil?